the hidden camera in the guest house. Hey everyone, it's Sarah, and welcome back to my channel. I'm about to share the creepiest experience of my life, something that still haunts me. This happened when I was 23, fresh out of college, and scraping by with gig work in my small hometown in Ohio. I was doing whatever paid: dog walking, tutoring, cleaning houses, you name it. One day, a regular client, Mrs. Thompson, who I'd pet sat for before, recommended me to a guy named Paul, a friend of her cousin. He needed someone to house sit and look after his elderly beagle, Daisy, while he was away for a week. The pay was decent, better than most gigs, and he wanted someone to stay overnight because Daisy got anxious alone. I thought it was a sweet deal, so I said yes. I met Paul a couple of days later at his place, a small single-story guest house on the edge of town, surrounded by dense woods. He was in his early 50s, wiry with a neatly trimmed beard and a baseball cap pulled low. He seemed polite, maybe a bit too talkative, but nothing screamed weird. The house was cozy but old. Think shag carpets and wood-paneled walls. Paul showed me the routine. Daisy's food was in the pantry. Her leash hung by the back door, and I'd sleep in the guest room off the kitchen. He pointed out a spare key under a flower pot and said I could help myself to anything in the fridge. Everything felt normal, so I didn't think twice. I started the job on a Sunday. The first 2 days were fine. I'd take Daisy for short walks around the backyard, watch Netflix on the ancient TV, and sleep in the guest room with Daisy snoring. At the foot of the bed, it was quiet, almost too quiet, with the woods blocking out any noise from town. On the third night, Wednesday, things got strange. I was in bed, scrolling through Instagram, when I noticed the alarm clock on the nightstand. It was modern, with a bright red LED display, which stood out against the room's dated vibe floral wallpaper, an old quilt, a clunky lamp. Something about the clock bugged me. I leaned closer and saw a tiny, perfectly round hole just above the numbers, glinting in the lamp's light. My heart skipped a beat. I'd read about hidden cameras disguised as clocks, and this looked exactly like one. I picked it up, and it was heavier than it should have been, with a faint hum coming from inside. I turned it toward me, staring into the hole, and my stomach twisted. It was definitely a lens. Right then, Daisy perked up from her spot by the door, letting out a low whimper. Then I heard a soft creak, like a floorboard settling, from somewhere deeper in the house. Paul wasn't due back until Saturday, and no one else was supposed to be there. My hands started trembling as I set the clock down. Then came another sound, a distinct thud, like a door closing in the hallway. I froze, clutching my phone, my pulse hammering in my ears. Footsteps followed, slow and deliberate, moving toward the guest room. I locked the door as quietly as I could and backed away, staring at the knob. A moment later, Paul's voice came through, calm but strained, saying he'd forgotten some documents and needed to grab them from the room. He asked me to open the door. I couldn't move. My mind was screaming he wasn't supposed to be here. Then he said, "It's not what you think. That clock's just a motion sensor for Daisy's anxiety." I didn't want to scare you by mentioning it. His excuse sounded like nonsense. I stayed silent, and his tone shifted. He started knocking harder, saying, "Come on, Sarah, don't be dramatic. Open the door and we'll talk." Daisy was growling now, her hackles up, which only made me more terrified. The knocking turned into pounding, and his voice got sharp, demanding I stop acting like a child. I glanced at the window. It was low enough to climb out. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely undo the latch. But I got it open, shoved the screen out, and scrambled onto the grass outside. Daisy stayed behind, barking furiously. I didn't stop to think. I ran through the yard, down the dirt path to the main road, and called my older brother, who lived 20 minutes away. I hid behind a tree, watching the house, expecting Paul to come after me. My brother picked me up, and I crashed at his place, too shaken to go home. The next day, I called a lawyer friend from college. She said without the clock or a recording, it'd be hard to prove anything. Paul could claim it was a sensor, and it'd be my word against his. I wanted to go back for evidence, but the thought of facing him made me sick. I never got paid for the 3 nights, and Mrs. Thompson ghosted me when I tried to ask if she knew anything about Paul. I still have nightmares about that clock's tiny lens staring at me, and the sound of that door closing in a house I thought was empty. It makes me wonder if he was there the whole time, watching. The Airbnb nightmare. Hey, it's Ethan, and this story still messes with me. Last October, my boyfriend, Liam, and I booked an Airbnb for a weekend trip to visit his parents in a small town in Vermont, about a 4-hour drive from our place. The listing was for a charming 2-story cabin with a big porch, hardwood floors, and cozy vibes. It was affordable, had solid reviews, and was only a mile from his parents' house. The description mentioned a locked shed out back for the owners, stuff which didn't seem like a big deal. Lots of hosts keep storage areas off dash limits. We arrived just after dusk on a Friday. The cabin looked a bit rougher than the photos, with peeling paint and overgrown bushes, but it was still cute. The host, Greg, was waiting for us. He was in his 60s, stocky, with a gray ponytail and a flannel jacket. His smile was friendly but forced, like he was trying too hard. He gave us a quick tour living room with a stone fireplace, a small kitchen, and a bedroom upstairs with a creaky 4-poster bed. He pointed to a padlocked door off the living room and said, in a tone that didn't invite questions, that the shed was private and we had no reason to go near it. He left after showing us the thermostat, and we settled in, unpacking and making dinner. The silence out there was intense. No cars, no neighbors, just the wind in the trees. That first night, around 1 a.m., I woke up to a faint thud from downstairs. I listened, but it didn't happen again, so I chalked it up to the old house settling. Liam was fast asleep, so I didn't wake him. The next day, we hung out with his parents, went apple picking, and got back to the cabin late. Around 3 a.m., I woke up again, this time to a scraping sound, like something being dragged across wood, coming from below. It stopped, started again, then stopped for good. I nudged Liam, who heard it too. We lay there, listening, but nothing else happened. We tried to laugh it off, but neither of us slept well. The second night was worse. We were exhausted from a day of exploring, but around 2 a.m., we heard footsteps downstairs, slow, heavy, with long pauses between sets. Liam whispered that it sounded like someone was pacing and listening. My skin was crawling, but we didn't move, just waited until dawn. The next morning, the cabin felt off, like the air was heavier. I checked the shed door. It was still locked, but there was a faint, musty smell, like damp earth and something rancid. That night, the noises started earlier. Around 11 p.m. a metallic clank, then more footsteps, on and off for hours. Liam was freaked out enough to suggest leaving, but I wanted to stick it out one more night then. On the third night, I noticed something while brushing my teeth. The smoke detector above the bed had a tiny, glossy black dot in the center, not like the rest of the plastic. I grabbed a chair, unscrewed it, and found a small camera inside, its red light blinking. My stomach dropped. Liam searched the room and found another lens hidden in a vent above the dresser. Both pointed at the bed. We didn't say a word, just packed our bags and got out, driving to a gas station to call the police. 2 officers met us and followed us back to the cabin. The front door was unlocked, which we hadn't left that way. They found the cameras, still active, and took them as evidence. When they checked the shed, the padlock was gone, and inside was Greg, hiding behind some boxers. With a monitor showing a live feed from the bedroom, he tried to run but didn't get far. The cops arrested him for trespassing and invasion of privacy. They said he'd been sneaking into the shed at night, watching us through the cameras. We didn't have to testify. Our statements were enough. For charges, Airbnb gave us a full refund and a voucher, but we've sworn off rentals. Hotels only now. If you've had a creepy Airbnb story, share it below. The roommate's secret. What's up? It's Kayla. And this one's fresh. It happened 2 weeks ago. I'm 26, living in a 3-bedroom apartment in a small city in Oregon with my roommate, Nate. We found each other through a local housing app. He was 28, a quiet IT guy who worked night shifts at a data center. When we met, he seemed chill, kinda nerdy, kept to himself, which was perfect since I just needed someone to split rent and not make a mess. I worked days as a graphic designer, so we barely saw each other. He'd be gone when I got home, and his door was usually shut when I left in the morning. It was a good setup for a few months. Then I started noticing weird stuff in my room. One day, my desk lamp was angled toward my bed, not my desk, where I always keep it. I figured I'd bumped it. A week later, my closet door was ajar, which I never leave open because it blocks the mirror. I brushed it off, but it left me uneasy. Then, one Sunday while vacuuming, I spotted something in the corner of my ceiling, near the light fixture. Tiny black dot. I grabbed a stool, thinking it was a nail or a crack, but when I looked closer, it was a small camera, stuck to the wall with adhesive. My heart sank. It was pointed right at my bed. I pried it off, hands shaking, and saw it had a slot for a memory card, but the card was gone. I felt sick thinking about all the times I'd changed or slept in that room. Nate was the only one with access to my room. He wasn't home. His shift didn't end till 6 a.m. I stood outside his door, debating whether to check inside. Against my better judgment, I opened it. His room was a mess: empty energy drink cans, clothes everywhere, and a desk piled with cables and gadgets. I didn't touch anything, just looked, but found no obvious evidence like a laptop with recordings. I closed the door and decided to test him. I hid the camera in my dresser, under some sweaters, and waited. For 2 nights, nothing happened. I was starting to think maybe I was wrong about Nate. Then, on the 3rd night, I woke up at 2:45 a.m. to a faint scraping sound, like a drawer being opened slowly. I kept my eyes half closed, pretending to sleep, and saw Nate in my room, rummaging through my dresser. My heart was pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. He froze, then turned toward me, like he sensed I was awake. In a low voice, he said, "I know you're not sleeping, Kayla. Where's the camera?" I bolted upright, anger overtaking fear. I yelled, asking why he'd put a camera in my room. He claimed it was because he thought I was sneaking into his room, taking his stuff. I called him out. That was absurd, and the camera was aimed at my bed, not his door. He kept saying I was overreacting, that it was just for security. We were shouting now, and I grabbed the camera from the dresser, waving it in his face, saying it was proof he was a creep. I stormed to the kitchen and smashed it on the counter, hoping to break it. I told him I was calling the landlord and the cops. Nate just stood there, fists balled, staring at me with this blank, creepy look, before walking back to his room without a word. I didn't sleep that night, sitting in the living room with a knife from the kitchen, jumping at every sound. In the morning, I checked the counter. The camera was gone. I told the landlord everything, but he said without evidence. It's my word against Nate's. I called the police, but they said the same thing. No camera, no case. Nate's still in the apartment, and we avoid each other. His stare when we pass in the hall makes my skin crawl, like he's waiting for something. I'm saving up to move out, but every night, I check every corner of my room for more cameras. Last night, I heard footsteps stop outside my door for a solid minute, before moving away. I'm not sure what he wanted with that camera, and I don't want to know. If you've been through something like this, drop it in the comments. Hit like, subscribe, and wish me luck getting out of here.